Welcome to Pigeon River Farm, doing farming right. I'm Robert Brown, the owner of Pigeon River Farm. Thank you for viewing. Good evening. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about getting the pasture prepared for the grazing season. In the previous episodes, we talked about getting the pasture prepared. We had done some drainage work on it in the fall. I put out the dry fertilizer. That's already been applied. It was applied about a month and a half ago, and that worked out really good. We got the weather was with us, the little frost to the ground, and we got the fertilizer spread. Now, next part is probably the most important part, and that's where I get once we just see a little bit of green starting to show in the pasture, I start working on optimizing it. And we use a product called Zone, manufactured by Zone Products, and it's biologicals. It's organic based. It's extremely healthy. The joke is you can drink it all, unlike the chemicals that you get conventionally put on the field. And it's highly active. It really is great products, and we there's quite a process to it. So there's a couple rules that are required. First is getting the ingredients all mixed. And this time of the year, the first thing we need to do is we use the soil biological. That's what they call it. And what it is, it's a series of enzymes that react to the leftover grasses, grass stubble, manure cakes that didn't break down during the winter, and so on. And it breaks it up really efficiently. So it needs to be applied first thing in the spring before you have your spring flush. So that was one of the ingredients that's put into the mix. The next one is going to be, we're going to use a nitrogen fixing microbes. It's called N-Fix, Zone N-Fix. And that is a powdery solution that needs to be put into a water and turned into a solution. And what that is actually just a real fine breakdown of all these microbial life that needs to be activated once it gets put into water. Put it in lukewarm water. We actually stir it vigorously and then let that sit for a little while, and then that gets mixed into the batch. The next one we're going to use is going to be called VR5. It's Zone VR5. Now that is some essential materials that's put on, and that is going to be your boron. Let's see, it's going to have your boron, copper, magnesium. It's going to have iodine in it. And them are key ingredients not only for animal health, but for plant health and for soil microbial life. So the level at which it's put in, it's in a liquid form, and it allows the process to start. It really gives a feeding, get everything started. Then we have a thing called Kelp Grow. It's a liquid kelp. That is, again, everybody knows how valuable kelp is. And this is done in a very concentrated. So when you think about kelp, even in a powdered form, this is refined in a healthy way, but very refined, and it's put into a solution that's kind of like condensed orange juice, something of that nature. And that, again, is mixed into the solution. The next one is, and really probably the most key ingredient, is something called MS crystals. It's a genuine cane sugar. As a rule, I mean, there's a whole series of ingredients here, but as a rule, you put in about 1 pound per acre. And that is the food for this biological life. When it's first introduced into the environment, it won't have any food. It's got to be integrated into the soil, absorbed into the plant, and it needs something to live off of. And that's where the MS crystals, or this liquid sugar that's sprayed in, it's put into the mix. So as you've seen, I was going ahead and I was mixing all that up, and I was putting it into, we had about 100 gallons of water in there at the time when you see me mixing it and then I added another 100 gallons, and then I let it wait a couple hours. So the first water was at ambient temperature. That particular day was around 60 degrees. And then I added in some more water that would be in and around 50 degrees. So as long as we stay above 50, we're going to be fine. So that was put into the sprayer, and then I went ahead and once I run the tractor, there's a circulator system that actually goes ahead and it recirculates the liquid to really thoroughly mix it up. Now applying it. Applying is more than just getting out and spraying. You notice there's no bright sunlight. It was an overcast early morning time that we were spraying, and there was still dew on the grasses. This is key. If you apply this when it's extremely dry or direct sunlight, it is killed. Microbial life cannot withstand sunlight. Just like a lot of diseases that have been in the news recently, it's exactly the same thing. That kind of biological life just has UV rays will typically take it out in very short order. So we don't need direct sunlight. Optimum is spray at night, but that wasn't really an option here. So we had dew on the plants, and that was critical to the decision to go ahead and do the spraying. That dew on there and or rain. Optimum for me that usually try to do is get out right before it's going to rain without sunlight, and that has been very successful. So the applying that gets to be a little bit of an art form. If you've never utilized a sprayer before, it's a little bit of an art form and a little bit of a science. You figure out the jet size and the pressures and all that. That's the science part of it. Then you get out there and you start making your passes and just see what your consumption is. Because the mix ratio is pretty critical. We're using typically around 6 ounces of the liquids per acre, so think about that. And now I'm putting in 200 gallons of liquid, so 6 times say 20, or I'm doing 10 acres here. So 10 acres, so I have 60 ounces, and then into 200 gallons, got my calculations out. So it should work out pretty good at the flow rates and the pressures. And then you start just keeping track. Do some mapping, utilize the drone for some of this, looking at flow rates and so on. Get a nice even dispersion across the whole entire field. That is critical. Now what this is all gonna do, I know I talked a lot of science here, but it's gonna give that plant that first boost in the spring of the year. It's gonna get the microbial life in the soil going. It's all going to happen naturally, but I've sped this up and I refortify the soil with all these, well, think about an inoculant. We're almost literally taking an inoculant, putting in there into the soil, and so the timing. And what the rule is around every 30 days we're going to apply. So I got the first application on, I'm just starting on the second application, and then as we get into the spring flush, once we actually start getting a flow going in the spring of grasses starting to grow, typically let's say around 6 inches or greater, then I'll be switching over to a little slightly different formula. Each crop type, each pasture is going to require a little bit different. The company is really an excellent company. I've used the products now going on, I think it's about 10 or 12 years. And it's been successful in every part. We use it in the high tunnel, when we did cash crops, and then additionally for all the pasture. They have very involved literature. They don't really have an internet presence, but they typically have a once-a-year class in our area, and it goes into great depth of the details of the product. And it's made by a family down in Missouri. They perfected this. There was a lot of science. Brilliant people, I would have to say, absolutely brilliant people. And they'd established this and experimented, and now it's used, actually used all around the world. It's got international presence. It's kind of funny for a company that doesn't hardly have any had internet perspective set up. They actually are all over the world. So I've had the good fortune to be trained and by their top staff. It's one of the family members, and I've learned so much. In the farming industry, like most industries, you never really stop learning. It's kind of funny. I always look at kind of farming and maybe medicine as the same thing. Everything's the same, but we keep on learning new things. Or in situation with farming, I think things get lost to time. You gotta look at the history of this. Biological farming was done very successfully. A lot of the massive leaps in technology were all taking place up to around 1940s. And during the war, we ramped up. All these all these companies that needed to be making gunpowder, explosives, and so on, chemicals for World War II. After the war, they needed to keep going, so the government put a lot of money into keeping them going, got the whole university system switched over from biological to chemical. And here's where we are today. Virtually all farming is chemical farming. Limited amount of biological farming. Other parts of the world, I'd have to give them a lot of credit. They do an excellent job. In the United States, yes, we're able to produce huge volumes of food. Questionable how healthy it is. And biologicals, healthy biologicals, organic biologicals, are really the only option out there to increase farming long term, because it's going to provide a solution to so many of the problems that have been brought on by chemical farming. We just got to rid the world of this chemical farming because we're toxifying our environment. Each year it's getting a little worse and a little worse. And eventually we're going to have a planet we won't even be able to live on. Even look at history, where man has gone in, depleted the soil to the point that the population ended up with actually serious problems. A good example where trace minerals were farmed out by repeatedly farming over and over again. Bone density problems. And you can look back in history of previous generations were very healthy. The only thing that changed was the soil got depleted. Well, we're back at it again. We're depleting the soil at such an accelerated rate. So it's critical that all of us make an effort to go forward and put something back. Give something back that, God gave us these gifts. And now we're in a situation that we're just wasting them. We're squandering these. So lots of different options for getting your pastures back into shape. It has worked extremely well. I would highly recommend it. If you need more information, or you want me to put on a more involved video along this line explaining more in depth both either the mixing, the materials, why I do what I do out there, what you've seen so far in this video, please leave comments and I will look into pursuing that farther. So I want to thank you all for your time and have a great evening.